In the northwest of Victoria is a town known as Mildura. It resides on the border of New South Wales and Victoria. With a population of 50,000 people, you and even I are surprised to tell you that it does not have a form of heavy rail transport, unless you live between the years of 1903 and 1993. Today in this short video we will be covering the rail line's history, closures, branch lines, what remains today, why it doesn't have a heavy rail transport, and are there plans to reopen the line. History. The Mildura line was built in stages throughout the late 1800s and early 1900s, at the height of the Octopus Act. Opening from Ballarat to Dunolly in 1874, then to St Arnaud a year later, extending to Donald in 1882, opening to Birchip in 1893, arriving at Wollongong in 1899, and finally reaching Mildura in 1903, with a line length of 567 kilometers. The line was built to serve grain, sand trains, and passengers. In the early to mid-80s, a report was issued to close all rail lines in Victoria. This was known as the Loamey Report. One of the lines to be closed is the Mildura line. However, as the government isn't stupid, the line was kept open. It lived for a few more years until 1993 when Bloody Jeff cancelled the Vineander unexpectedly, which meant no more passenger trains to Mildura, only coaches. Fortunately, the line still lives on as a freight-only line, with the exception of the Maryborough line, which is almost useless. In 2018, as part of the Murray Basin Rail project, the line was converted to standard gauge, and Maryborough to Dunolly was converted to dual gauge, having both standard and broad gauge tracks. Branch lines. Many branch lines have been built off the Mildura line, but most of them have been closed, either in the 1960s or the 1990s. These include the Dalesford line, which came off the Mildura line at North Creswick and closed in 1986. The Moore line, which came off the Mildura line at Maryborough and closed in 2004. The Robinvale line, which came off the Mildura line at Dunolly and closed to passengers in the 1990s. Nauru line, which came off the Mildura line at Nungar and closed in 2007. The Moorcarlan line, which has now been converted to 610mm gauge and is now the Redcliffe Historical Steam Society. And the Yelta line, which came off the Mildura line at Mildura and was closed to passengers in 1993. Closure. In 1993, passenger services which did not decline were cut just a week before they were said to be cut. This meant that in a matter of an announcement at Spencer Street Railway Station, around 400 kilometers of rail line were not to be receiving any more passenger services. At least the line is still open to freight. Accidents. In spring of 1945, the Mildura Express, bound for Mildura, collided head-on with a goods train at Lascelles. The locomotive was written off as a result. In summer of 2014, a Pacific National goods train carrying grain derailed near Emu, which damaged the track for 150 meters. What remains today? Most of the Mildura line has now been standardized, which means the track was turned from broad to standard gauge. Since the Mildura line is now a goods-only line, stations are no longer in use. Some stations have been preserved, mostly in town centres. Others didn't make it. Loop sidings have been added, and all lines but the Robinvale and Vavoca lines have been closed. You can still travel on it today if you go on the underused Maryborough line. Today, the Mildura line is in the best condition compared to the other lines from the Murray Basin Rail project. Why doesn't the Mildura line have heavy rail transport? The Mildura line doesn't have any heavy rail transport because in the 1990s, a man called Jeff Kennett closed many of the lines on the Victorian networks, such as the Leongatha, Portland, and Kahuna lines. Are there any plans to reopen the Mildura line? Since 1993, there have been many plans to reopen the Mildura line, such as the plans in 1990, 2002, and 2006 proposed by the Brumby and Brax governments. In 2010, the Piangi line was supposed to extend to Mildura via Oyen. If services did return, either the entire Mildura line is turned to dual gauge, or tracks going past Maryborough have to take a different route, as Maryborough line uses broad gauge, and going past Dunolly are standard gauge tracks. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you liked this video about the Mildura line. History on the railway stations will be uploaded as a short. If you have any suggestions on what line I should do next, do leave a comment. If not, I will see you later.